Look at the
Yeah,
camera.
don't look at the...
What about when I'm like making a point? Just to creep people out.
Yeah.
Or what if every now and then I just wink at it? I'm Monica Gallagher, and I'm a full-time comic artist / writer. I have 2 webcomics that I do on a weekly basis. And other than that, I do a lot of freelance illustration and other comic book script writing work. When I was younger, I read a lot of Calvin Hobbes and Garfield and comic strips, and so I would just draw them all the time and trace them. I even made like Garfield Valentine's Day box for my elementary school. You know how I used to make those Valentine's Day boxes? And then after that, I moved into real comics, like comic books with ElfQuest, because my friend's parents had a copy in their basement that I found when I was 12. And after that, I just started, I used ElfQuest as a way to get into comic shops, and it gave me something to talk about. And then the people who worked there gave me other recommendations. And from there, it just kind of like spread into other things that I was interested in. But I was always trying to copy everything that I saw. Everything that I was reading. I would always like try to draw and copy it. And the same with manga and anime. I started with Ranma, which is still one of my favorites. Ranma 1/2 by Rumiko Takahashi, because that had a bunch of like anime and manga attached to it. And then I moved on to Fushigi Yugi. I was a huge fan. I don't know if you know that one. There was a tiny video store in College Park that had a very, very tiny library of anime. And so I pretty much watched all of what they had. Like Devil Hunter Yoko, I remember. Bastard was one. Cardcaptor Sakura. There are just tons. Whenever I was reading it, I was always picturing my own stuff as well. Or like I said, tracing stuff. So I was constantly like drawing what I was seeing over and over again. So I guess there was never a distinction between me ingesting the media and then deciding like, oh, I need to put it out there. I was just constantly doing both all the time. I didn't really have a plan like, oh, one day I'm going to do this. I just started doing it as I was reading it. My first comic that was tiny published was the one that I made for my best friend for her birthday in high school. And then I think I distributed it to like more of my friends after that. And then I think I just went straight online after that. Nice. Yeah, once I had enough stuff, I just like put it online. My first convention was SPX in 2002, because I'm also old. And that one I just went to find out. I don't even know how I like came across it. Because before that, I think I'd been going to comic shops and just like asking like, hey, can you carry my stuff? Even though I had like, I don't know, like printouts or something. Somehow I heard about SPX and I wish I could remember how I knew that. And it was amazing. And I just was like, oh, next year I'm going to do this. And so then in 2003, I still just had a webcomic. So I printed it out and put it in a binder and then had like free stickers and cards to give away. And when people came by, I'd be like, go read it online. The first SPX I exhibited at in 2003 is when I met like Danielle Corsetto, I met Tim Fish, I met a bunch of other indie comics creators. And then I kind of latched on to like, well, what are you guys doing next? You know? And they were going to MoCA in New York. They were going to Ape in San Francisco. So I think I did all of those shows in like 2004. I started just like on that circuit and then kind of spread out. Like anytime I heard of a cool new show, I'd be like, oh, I want to go. Because I had a day job, so I could afford it, kind of. I'd stay in like youth hostels and stuff. But it was still fun to just like have an excuse. Like my first Ape, I had a book. So that might have been 2004, like April 2004, I realized I should have a book and not just like a binder and tell people to go online. And I got that done at like my local printer, just like perfect bound, but I didn't really format it very well and it was kind of a mess. And then after that, I primarily just focused on either printing everything out myself and stapling it or using local printers. And then my first big foray into self-publishing printing was I used a printer in China to do a big run of my first webcomic book, Gods and Undergods. So it was a minimum 1,000 copies, full color, like ridiculous investment. And I think I did that in like 2005, 2006, I don't remember. Yeah. So it's been kind of a variety of like self-published stuff and local printers and then like the bigger stuff. But it was all still self-published. I was looking for a publisher kind of, but also not waiting for them. My first publisher was Oni Press, and they found me because of one of my webcomics was about roller girls, and they're doing an anthology of roller girls. So I lucked into that one. And then it was only like a 8-page story. And after that, I was like, please, like, what else can I do? And I was able to submit my character designs for consideration on another graphic novel with an author, Adrienne Ambrose. So my first real book was illustrating Glitter Kiss with her. And it was lovely because it's fun to self-publish in a sense because you're like, I'm going to do it myself and like bootstraps, like I'm going out in the world. But then no one is telling you like, oh, that kind of sucks, or oh, you need to like mix up your drawing a little. I remember one of the best things I was told right off the bat when working on Glitter Kiss was I was showing the same shot over and over. Like people like, I don't know, waist up or something, like exactly the same way. They're like, you might want to mix up the angles a little bit. I was like, oh. So there was a lot of stuff that I'd let myself get away with that I wasn't comfortable drawing or I didn't know any better that an editor immediately could tell me. And then I was like, oh, now my work has exponentially gotten better because of you. So that's always a benefit to working with a publisher, having a really good editor. And then they handle all the printing and formatting and distribution, and that's something I'm terrible at, so that's also good. I guess the only downsides are there are people who are into complete control over like Pantones and layout and quality, and so maybe that's something they would argue for or want more of a hand in that, or like designing the book. But for me, I'm just like let me do the comics part. You take everything else over. Yeah. Every publisher has an editor, and I've worked with a variety of different types. There's some editors that are very like hands-off, just like you do you, which is cool. And then there are some editors who really like kind of like micromanage you. And then there are ones in between. My favorite type of editor, I think, is the one that asks you a bunch of questions. Because it's obvious they're trying to get you somewhere, but like you don't know where. And they don't want to tell you, like, no, just do it a different way. So I like, because then you discover it on your own and you feel very proud. Like somehow you came to it by yourself and really the editor was like tricking you into it. That's my favorite type of editor. One of my ways that I usually work when I'm doing stuff myself is I try to write as far out as I can. And then as I get closer to drawing it, I edit it and edit it and edit it. So it's not, so like the first draft technically is when I'm putting it all out there. And then as I'm getting closer, I keep like paring it down. Because I do have an editor with Webtoons, but usually they're pretty hands off. So if you have a question, I think they're fine with that. But like, I think they don't want to interfere because they know it's like, go, go, go. So if something's glaringly wrong, they might tell you. But otherwise, just like, all right, I'm gonna keep going my way.
Of all the cartoonists I know, you have the most number of projects going on at the same time.
Really?
Because you have Boo, you have Assassin Roommates, and then you have your comics. You have the Gods and Roommates.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
I don't do that anymore. Yeah. I have Bonnie and Clyde, kind of.
Clyde. Yeah.
That's been on hiatus for a while, so I don't know if I can count that.
You've got that. Plus, you've got freelance stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, you have writing gigs. Plus, you're pitching. Like, Monica, how the fuck do you do all this shit?
I don't. Oh, did you see my clone? She was here earlier. I told her to take a hike, so it looked like I was doing everything myself. She handles all the public appearances, and then I do all the real work. I think it's that freelance problem where you can't say no because you're always afraid of the work drying up. But also you need to diversify your income streams. So then you feel like, oh, I need to take from everywhere. Like, what can I do? So it's those two things. And then also like, I'm always like, I want to get involved in that. I want to be part of that party. And I really like pushing my limits to see what I'm capable of as long as it doesn't show in the work. Like as long as the work doesn't get super sloppy, which is something I'm always worried about. Like that people will think like, oh, okay, she's overstretched and like the work is suffering. Otherwise, I'll really push myself to try to be involved in everything because I don't want to be left out. Or it's just fun. Like this year or last year, I got to work on a scripted podcast, which I'd never done. So I was like, ooh, I definitely want to do that. And then it was a madhouse of trying to juggle everything at the same time. Or pitching the Boo comic with Danielle was like, oh, I want to draw a sex ed comic. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that with everything else, but I want to do it. So yeah. I was at a convention with Joey Weiser. I don't remember what year, maybe 2012 or 2013. And we were talking about Fluke, which is a one-day show in Georgia near SCAD, and how it's like super casual, and they would have it in a bar. And I was like, all conventions should be like that, because I think we were sitting in Emerald City at the time, which was like a madhouse, convention center space. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool if you could just like have casual conventions like that going on all the time? And so I got back to Baltimore and I was like, well, why wouldn't this be possible? And I knew a guy who ran a bar that now unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, called Bad Decisions in Fells Point. And he was a derby guy. I met him in roller derby. So I asked him, I was like, would it be cool if we could bring in some people with comics on like a Saturday afternoon? Like let me know how much the space would cost to rent, or, how we do that. And he was like, no, it'd be fine. And the bar usually, like bars a lot of times will open at 5 on Saturdays. So if you ask them to open at noon, like noon to 5 is just bonus for them, like bonus income. So we did that. We made it free and open to the public so that people walking in off the street could just randomly come in and see comics, which they wouldn't go to a convention for. They wouldn't wait in line forever, spend $50 and know specifically what they were going to see. They would happen upon it, and then maybe it would spark an interest in them. And so that was like the reason why I created it. And I've tried to hold it in different bars around Baltimore. We found a really nice performance space with the wind-up space, so we keep going back there. But we have tried some other bars. And it's always lovely. Like if we get at least one person who stumbles and is like, what's this? Like it's worth it. It's like a little mini flea market, but it's bringing comics into a realm that's adult. Like that's why we hold it in bars, because comics are for kids, but I think we have that covered. Like people are aware that comics are for kids. I don't think a lot of adults realize they're also for them.
What's gonna happen to me more when you leave us, Monica?
I don't know. I honestly, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna start the dynasty that I've been waiting to start, because I want them to be in different cities. I was really hoping it would catch on. And there's only one guy, and unfortunately I forget his name right now, I'm blanking on it, on Twitter, that told me in Dublin he started one because of it. And I was like, yes. Because I really want them to be in different cities, so you could go somewhere and maybe 4 or 5 times a year they were having these little tiny conventions. You could just join in or like visit one. So now I'm going to have to start one in Austin. That's right. So call it Be More Into Austin. I don't know. Austin into comics.
Be more into Austin. Doesn't quite work.
I think I wouldn't have gotten any of the jobs I've gotten because without conventions. There's always editors walking around, and then there's always creators, and community is so important in comics that as long as you maintain that with other people, like check in on what everybody's doing, everyone's kind of sharing info about who they're working with and what that's like. And then other publishers and editors are kind of in the mix too. Because I've found that when I stop going to conventions, if I have to stop for like a year or whatever, then I really like lose touch with everything. So sometimes it feels like a roller coaster, like not a rat race. Like you're constantly like trying to keep up with everybody, but it's also really validating and important when you all like get together. I mean, SPX is always going to be my favorite because that was my first, and they're such sweethearts. And they've really done a good job of keeping like an amazing show at a certain size and not like in a feel and not like going into a convention center and blowing it up. I love TCAF because they had a green room, and then they'd have volunteers that would come around and make change for you, which was amazing. I love Thought Bubble, which is in England. Getting an excuse to go over there and see how they do it is really fun. I like seeing different setups at different conventions. I wish there was more variety to that. Like, I think there's a lot of them that have moved to giant convention centers, but they haven't changed anything like kind of fun about it. So I'd like to see more of that. Like even just putting up signs in Artist Alley, like where people are, was really helpful when some conventions do that. Or having like a green room with coffee. None of them really do that, which I think we desperately need. Yeah, so I have a lot of ideas, apparently a lot of opinions on ways to make conventions better, but every experience has been like really fun. I've had very rare like crap experiences. Now I know the importance of like eating and drinking all day, even when you don't think you're hungry, because all of a sudden you'll realize like you're jittery and you've had 10 cups of coffee and you're like, why am I jittery? Why am I shaky? Like, I used to get a lot of anxiety about being stuck in a convention center, which is strange. It wasn't like, it's like the opposite of claustrophobia. Like a big giant space full of lights would freak me out. And I don't know if it's because the exits were like not easily accessible or something. So I really had to like get into like a mental exercise with myself where I like either would just go out and leave for a while and come back, or just like, I don't know, remind myself that I was in like a little space, like at my table. It was safe space. And that really, I mean, I still have to remind myself of that sometimes. It gets really overwhelming. I don't know. Besides that, now I recognize how exhausting it is just being pleasant all day. But I still want to do it. I still have so much fun and always want to go out even after I'm exhausted. And yeah, I'm probably not the person to ask then for a good routine. Sleep, who needs sleep? I just want to party and talk to everybody forever. Why? I'm going to live forever. Don't follow my advice, kids. When I get up in the morning, I do try to do something creative, like writing or drawing, because I am really productive then. Towards the end of the day, I do find like, because I'll save stuff sometimes that's kind of mindless, like inking or coloring, because I know by the end of the day I'm wiped, so I'm not really going to be paying attention. And I want to have like a movie on in the background so I can pretend that I'm like not working around the clock. But I try to break up my day. In the middle of the day is when I like run my errands and go to the gym and go to the grocery store and all that stuff, because I like to have some stuff done so that even if the errands suck up a lot of time, I'm like, well, at least I did stuff, even if it's hard to get back to it afterwards. I think Megan Levins was the one who told me about these really soft blue pencils that they're very, very light and they erase really easily. And so I use that as well as a blue mechanical pencil now, which seems like you're doubling the pencil time. But now I can get out all my crazy person gesture drawings with the really light stuff before I go in with the regular pencil, which has saved me a lot of time and a lot of like, I don't know, erasing all over the place. And then the brushes I use, Winsor Newton Series 7. And I know people have recommended other ones that are cheaper, but I need to like research where they've gotten them, because it took me a while to realize, oh, you have to replace your brushes every now and then. I thought if I clean them, I can use them forever. And then I was like, why am I no longer good at brushing? And then I realized that the brush is like down to its last like 5 little things. Like, oh, it's not me, it's the brush. And because because I ink 7 pages a week, I go through them pretty quickly. So now I'm aware that if it really starts sucking, it might be like time to get a new brush. I use Bristol board, the smooth kind. And the ink I really like, I think it's Dr. something's matte black. There are 2, Dr. Bombay ink. There are 2 that I go back and forth on whether or not they're like available, because I don't know. I think I get them on Amazon or Blix or something. But yeah, and that's a weird thing too that I struggle with, is like sometimes the ink comes out fine and sometimes it seems really like watered down. And I never know if that's like a shaking thing, or I remember like Becky Cloonan used to say something about like sticking her inks in the freezer. But I don't know how long for. I need like a recipe for like how long to let it simmer in there, because I did it once and it was just frozen. Like, how's it go with it? It didn't work. So if someone out there could tell me, maybe. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's a brand of ink, a consistency, or something I need to do to make sure that that's, yeah. I do color work primarily in Photoshop. So I color all my comics, and very simply, just I don't know that much about coloring, so it's all very just like flatting and then shading, which you taught me. You taught me like some good tips on shading, you and Danielle. And I have never like gone beyond that. I'm like, I'm just doing this forever. I haven't branched out. Maybe if I had more time. But colorists can do amazing things, and I'm so not a colorist.
Are you a spy, Monica?
Why would I tell you that?
Look at this. This is off the record. I've turned off the camera. Are you secretly a spy, Monica?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I don't, it's kind of funny. I don't know why it's always fascinated me, but I think a reason I keep coming back to it is like maybe I haven't. Well, no, I do use it a lot. I used to think I had a Venn diagram of like 5 things I was interested in, and then would just make a comic. It was like roller derby, assassins, werewolves, boobs, and then it like would just mix and match between them. This one's gonna have boobs and werewolves. This one's gonna have roller derby. Oh, Greek mythology is another one. Yeah, so like I just spin this wheel that I have in my studio, and then what are we working on today? No, I wanted to do assassins, and I still love doing assassins because I feel like there's so much that you can, I don't know, explore with that. And we don't see that much variety when it's portrayed. I mean, there's so, like, we're very heavily saturated with spy movies and assassin movies, but they all still show the same things over and over. I feel like vengeance kills, like sexy leather ladies. So, I don't know. I want to see a variety of assassin work. That's my contribution to the world. Anyone can be an assassin, right? From what I've seen lately, it seems like a lot of people get bogged down by indecision about what to do. Like, they don't want to start something because it won't be perfect, or they don't want to start something because they don't know how it's going to end. And I think you always just have to start, and it's not that big a deal if you start something and you don't want to do it anymore. I think that's really important because you don't want to put so much pressure on yourself that you just never try. And a lot of people, I see them doing that. They're like, well, I can't do it until I've learned this, this, and this, and I know how to draw people perfectly. And it's like, no, just, you'll figure it out as you go. Plus, that's a really good way to find out if you're actually interested in it. Because I've also known people who put a lot of time and effort into one book, and they're like, oh, I'm never doing that again. So it's good. It's good to know that. Like what your style is. That's usually what I tell people, is just keep going and finish something. Like, even if it's a tiny, 3 or 5 page book, just finish it so that you know you can. Don't make it your big opus, which we all do, where you're like, it's going to go on forever. I mean, we're all guilty of that. You can still do that if you want, but finish something so that you know you can, because that'll give you confidence to do the next thing. Assassin Roommate's always on. It's always out there. And the 4th season will be coming up in a couple months. 3rd season's almost over right now. I don't know when this airs, depending on when this airs. Maybe over.
How long it takes me to fucking edit is when it airs.
Edit out all the garbage truck sounds. Yeah, Boo with Sex is going to keep going for a bit. So read that. And then, Assassin Roommate will come back with a vengeance. Other than that, I'll probably be working on like a lot of random stuff that I'll put on my website in the meantime. There's a lot of stuff I would love to do. I really enjoyed working on a scripted podcast, so I'd love to do that again, like with sound effects and like the whole gamut, and doing that like about a comic, like about like superheroes and stuff, I think would be amazing. They probably already have that out there, but whatever. I still think that would be fun. I would love to there's been a trend where they bring back like old school Marvel and DC characters and like revamp them and give them a whole new backstory. And I remember I had this whole pitch for Dolphin. Was this like woman who like was like half fish, and she wore like jean cutoffs and like swam around the water. She's like Aquaman but more boring. If that's possible. Or burn on Aquaman. But I had this whole pitch that I wanted to do about her. But any like being able to control like an old school character and revamp them and bring them back in a modern light, I think would be fascinating, even for like a limited series run. Also, I would love to collaborate with more people on more projects for like an intense period of time, like a book or a series with like a whole bunch of people that we get to like mix and match styles with. Yeah, there's just tons of stuff I'd love to work on. Especially when it comes to webcomics. Like, back in my day, like, we had a Linux system for email in college. Like, what?